Test 1, 2, 3. Check, check.
All right. We are called to order. We have a quorum. Mr. Jones is on a medical appointment. Mr. Snodgrass will join us telephonically after a church service for a funeral at 1800. That's 6 o'clock for you Air Force people. And it's a great day in Kershaw County, All-American County. And we're now, this week, 6 months into something none of us have ever experienced before, except maybe our grandfathers and great-grandfathers with this pandemic. And I regret to say that we've had 18 deaths and 2 in the last 2 weeks. So I ask you to join me in a moment's silence. Please bow your heads. And all God's people say amen.
Amen.
We are now called to order, and we'll follow the normal procedures. We begin with the invocation of Pledge of Allegiance. With Mr. Snodgrass gone, I ask Mr. Tucker to lead us. Would you all please stand?
Let us all bow our heads and open our hearts, please. Lord God, Father Almighty, you said, come to you and ask for the things that we need. You said, ask and we will receive. Lord Father, I'm asking this day that you watch over this county, the citizens, the elected officials, and all who is a part of it. Lord Father, and I ask that you give us the courage up here tonight to do what is in best interest for your people, your children. Lord, take your blood and wash this disease, this pandemic that is going around in the world.
Yes, sir. Amen.
Heal the land, Lord, as only you can do. We're needing and asking for your mercy and your forgiveness for the things that we didn't get right, didn't do right, and anything that we offend others with. Now, Lord Father, when it's said and all done, we're going to be so careful to give you the praise, the honor, and the glory. We thank you for our men and women that are celebrating in the armed services. We ask that you cover them and watch over them as well. We pray these things in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. We've got public comments are next, and I have 3 phone-in, written-in comments, and under our rules, and now that we're in a COVID environment, people are permitted to send in public comments by email to Mary. I have 3 to read. How many do you have, Mr. DeBose, that are here?
Mr. Chairman, 4 people signed up.
4. I think we can apportion about 4.5 minutes to each person, and I'll try to be brief. Now, under our rules, we give priority to those people calling in or called in, so allow me to start with public comments as read in. This one comes from Mr. Richard Clark from Speaks Oil Company, and he says, please vote in favor of the face mask ordinance. We operate multiple locations throughout the county and need this for the protection of our employees and customers. Thanks for your consideration and support. The second one is from Mrs. Shara Scott, who runs the shooting range. And I'll read that very quickly. I'm writing to voice my displeasure with the ordinance on face masks and to urge you not to vote for the ordinance. The citizens of Kershaw County are freedom-loving Americans who value personal responsibility over government control. Most of the people I know, and myself included, have avoided shopping in the areas that are requiring face coverings, including Camden and Richland County. I urge you not to vote for this ordinance and trust that the citizens of this county have been informed of the risk of not wearing masks, and they have chosen to wear or not wear those masks based on what they feel is best for them. Sincerely, Shara Scott. I go to the third comment from Mr. Donnie Supplé, which is about 2.5 pages. He sent it to every one of the councilmen, but I'll try to summarize it. From Mr. Supplé at the United Way, and he made clear that he is not speaking on behalf of United Way or the board. He said, local government is the people's government and is referred to at council. The community votes in the council elections to choose those councilmen who will represent their voice. The internet and perhaps each individual defines the role and responsibilities of local government differently. And I'm skipping through and making it short, but Mary will have it on the record. I think, or at least hope, that each of you views your role as caring for the future of our county as an elected official. Next paragraph, I'm just reading title pages to make sure everybody's voice has equal time. The COVID-19 pandemic is something we have never faced or hopefully will never face again. For now and since March, our county and state have been leaders in word but not deed. We have attempted at every turn and with great leadership from Mr. Carpenter to accentuate the positive. At a state and local level, we have talked about South Carolina and Kershaw County strong and shared our confidence that folks will do the right thing without our laying down the law. We can blame our federal and state government for their failures, or we can extol their virtues, getting the economy back to its feet. We can argue about every side with conspiracy theories, the blame game, and so on. Going to the second page. Please review the facts, consider them, and evaluate your response. What are other states and communities doing that works? What have other counties done that works? I also know there is a deeply seated sense of personal independence and autonomy that makes us hesitate to tell others what to do. Gentlemen, can you say it is getting better in our community? Can you say that our community citizens are facing the realities? Can you say that it is okay for others to endanger those most at risk? Can you say that wearing a mask makes no difference? Maybe there are questions I'm not asking. Maybe you have a better plan. And he goes on to say that wearing a mask is a small price to pay for making our community a safer, better, and healthier place to live and work, worship, and play. Finally, he concludes, I don't envy your task, but I do, in fact, we all do, hope and trust in your leadership, especially in hard times. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. We are in the same boat, and we rise or sink together, and I hope we would rise. Sincerely, Donnie Supplé. Those are the 3 written-in comments. Mary, are there any others? Okay, and I'll give these to you for the record. And Mr. DeBose, would you call forward those people that want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As I stated, 4 people have signed up. The first person that signed up is Jim Steele.
Mr. Steele, as you come forward, and we welcome you back to the chamber here. This is not a question and answer period, as you're well aware, but many people may not know that we're here to listen, and there's no exchange back and forth. Kindly keep your comments on the subject, and let's keep it within the decorum of this body. Sir, Mr. Steele, welcome back. Sir.
Thank you. I'm here tonight wearing this mask for one reason. It's the only reason it let me in the door, so that my voice could be heard, okay? Everyone in here, I think, is old enough to remember SARS, MERS, swine flu, bird flu, H1N1. What do they all have in common? They were supposed to decimate humanity, supposed to wipe us off the face of the earth because they were so terrible. Well, the same goes for COVID-19, okay? I hear people say nobody's ever experienced this before. Well, probably nobody in this room, maybe, unless, like I said, you've lived through the aforementioned epidemics, okay? Yes, the Spanish flu in 1918, that was a really bad one, okay? But none of these, what do these have in common? In none of these cases did the government shut down people's livelihoods. In none of these did the government demand that people do what the government told them to do, okay? So I am against the mask ordinance, and people ask me why. I'm in the high-risk group. I'm 68 years old, had a heart attack, I have diabetes, and I have a laundry list of ailments dating back to my military service, okay? But just remember this, those who give up freedom for security wind up with neither one. I hope you'll all vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. DeBose.
The next person that signed up is Tom Webb.
Mr. Webb, sir.
I hear we're going to commemorate the end of the war with Japan today.
Mr. Webb, pull that mic down,
Yeah,
please. Thank
there
you.
you go.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
I hear we're going to commemorate the end of the war with Japan today. They were a terrible enemy back then, a good friend these days. Well, what's the difference? I suppose that, for one thing, they believed everything they were told back then. Their news was propaganda. They were regimented, so much regimentation, famous for it, actually. And kind of like us today, I think we should fear too much regimentation. That is, too many rules and regulations to have us all lined up, walking the same way, talking the same way, wearing the same kind of mask. I'm wearing one a little bit different today just for that. Mask. I don't think we need the ordinance to force people to do something they're already doing. If you notice, as I have, going to stores, various places, almost everybody is already wearing a mask. I think for Americans to be full American-style citizens, they have to run their own lives. It's very important because everything is a little stepping stone. One thing leads to another, to another, to another. And what comes after everybody wearing a mask? There'll be something. And I've noticed you don't want to spread it. So this is one of these things that maybe doesn't work all that well, generally speaking. Now, one of the meetings I was here, one of the gentlemen sitting over here was not wearing a mask, but he put one on in deference to a gentleman sitting elsewhere who had some health problems. And I think that's very appropriate. That is the way to do it. That when you see somebody who needs you to wear a mask, okay. But for the general public and people here, I noticed some of the people here were reaching up and touching their mask. That contaminates your hands. And if you're going to do this right, you have to immediately sanitize your hands because you'll be touching doorknobs or something, or maybe this fountain pen. But the general public's not likely going to do that. They handle their masks, they contaminate their hands, they open the door, they use a gas pump. So this mask wearing has both a positive and a negative side to it that may really cancel each other out. It may actually be in the favor of spreading it just a little bit for the general population. So I really think it's a bad idea to force people to wear a mask for several reasons. And then I wanted to speak a little bit about the virus itself. It seems that it might be an experimental biological weapon that came out of the Wuhan lab in China. But if it is a biological weapon, it's not a very effective one. It hasn't been much more than a bad case of the flu for most people. And it's what people always died from when they had the flu, and that's pneumonia. And not necessarily directly from the virus, but from the bacteria that takes up residence in an injured lung, which is generally treatable by antibiotics if you get it early enough. But what this experimental biological weapon did that came out of China, they played it right. They knew what they were doing. They probably ran computer programs. It was very effective psychologically. It got this country shut down. It shut down the world. And in the meantime, somebody has recently looked up online. I don't know how you do that. I'm computer illiterate. They found that there are 20 million cell phones in China who no longer have owners. And what that might mean is that there were 20 million people in China who were killed off, bullet in the head more than likely. They were dissidents. And it was blamed on the virus, a very Chinese way to use the virus. So the Chinese have been rounding up Christians and Muslims and anybody, Hong Kong people, anybody that stands against them just a little bit. So it's been a very good way for them to cover their killing off their own citizens. Now,
Tom, can you find a way to wrap it up? We're getting close here.
Very quick. The solution is catch it, treat it, and beat it. There's more evidence coming out from various doctors being suppressed that this hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc is the antiviral part. And there are doctors trying to get that message out, and their message has been taken off of the internet. That's all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Mr. DeBose.
Mr. Chairman, the next person that signed up is Shira Scott, but I believe you read her comments into the record, but she also signed up.
Oh, is she here? I didn't see her. Shira here? How'd I do, Shira? Did I do okay?
Since you did already read my email, I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it this evening. I will keep it brief. I just do want to reiterate that we are freedom-loving Americans in this county. Government overreach is a very big concern for most of the people in my circle, and we do remember that come election time. So I will put that out there. And also bear in mind that masks are not viable in every situation. Out at the range, we have to be able to be heard. The masks muffle voices. We have to be able to be loud. Couple that with hearing protection and the mask, it makes for an unsafe environment. So we may be one of those places that we would have to have an exemption for safety reasons for our employees. I don't understand why citizens can't do what they feel is right for themselves, their family, and their situation. Not everyone is at high risk. The numbers have been going down in this state. I've been keeping watch of the numbers. Why, 6 months into this, are we taking this up now?
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. DeBose?
The last person that signed up is Anthony Godfrey.
Mr. Godfrey?
Hey, my name is Anthony Godfrey. I'm a board-certified family physician. I specialize in hospital medicine. I have a special certificate in hospitalist medicine. I've been a resident of Kershaw County.
Talk into the microphone, please, Anthony.
I've been a resident of Kershaw County since 2007. I have 3 children that go to school here. I worked at Kershaw Health until 2015, and now I work at Toomey Hospital, which is completely overrun by COVID-19 patients. On ventilators, we have no ventilators left at times. We have no BiPAP machines left at times. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but McLeod Regional Medical Center has a PICU that has at least 4 patients under the age of 12 in the PICU, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit there, that have been fighting for their lives. I'm a libertarian. I hate the government. I hate paying taxes. I hate the government telling me what to do. The reason why the numbers are going down in South Carolina is because people have been wearing masks. I moonlight at Kershaw Health. I recently had a patient at Kershaw Health, a perfectly healthy 65-year-old man. Probably shouldn't give any more information, but he works in Kershaw County and wore a mask to work. However, some of his patrons did not. One of his patrons were coughing. He told the guy he should probably go home. He had no teeth to do that with, though. So a couple of days later, about 7 days later, he got the virus. His wife got the virus. They have 2 grandchildren that go to our public schools, which are opening September 7th. This is a public health crisis that we have never seen before in our lifetime. Never. This is not the bird flu. This is not the flu. I don't have people satting 70% oxygen that are perfectly healthy when they come into before they come into the hospital that need to be put on a ventilator because of the flu. I've never experienced that in 20 years of practicing medicine. Never. I've written more death certificates in the past 3 months because of COVID-19 than I have for any other illness. Masks help. They are not the end-all, be-all. They're not. But if everybody doesn't wear one, they don't help. They don't. And yeah, I agree. At a shooting range, when you're outside, you don't need to wear a mask. I go to the pool. I go to the country club.
Okay.
I go to the country club all the time and swim with my kids. I don't wear a mask there. That's stupid. You don't wear a mask outside, but when you're inside a business, and there are tons of people inside that business, you spread it to one person, they spread it to more people who have grandchildren or children that go to our schools that we are opening. And my son's going to go to school because the risk of him not going to school at this time is worse for his mental health than him going to school. But if he gets it, he's probably going to be fine. If I get it, I'm 47, I'll probably be okay. If my parents get it, they'll end up in the hospital, almost certainly. Almost certainly they will. I've said my piece.
Thank you, Mr. Godfrey. And Mr. DeBose?
That concludes the sign-up list.
Very good. Thank you very much. And that concludes the public comments. We move now to the adoption of the agenda. It's up on the board. Can I have a motion so to do?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Tucker gives a first, a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing there is none, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. And it's unanimous, Mary, with Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Jones absent. And Mr. Snodgrass will call in about 15 minutes. Okay. We'll move now to a public presentation. And then, we moved the agenda around so that we could move to the proclamation. And it's the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II and also the victory over Japan. And I would like to see if the veterans outside would like to come in, if you could bring them in. If you can find them some seats, and then we'll have them come forward. Gentlemen, if y'all can find some seats, there's a few over here. We're honored that y'all came tonight. Thank you very much. And thank y'all for giving room for these veterans. I would note that we have 2 World War II veterans here too. And they look in better shape than most of us. One of them's a Marine. That's a scary thing.
Gotta watch that one in the red shirt.
All right, we'll follow this protocol. I will read the declaration about victory and the 75th anniversary of that war, and then we'll take a motion and vote on it and have some comments. Proclamation in honor of the 75th anniversary of the victory over Japan, VJ Day, and the end of World War II, whereas it is the custom of this body to commemorate significant events which represent turning points in our patriotic history and which are indelibly etched in the saga of our great nation. And whereas Harry Truman, as president on the 14th of August, declared hostilities at an end, which led to Japan's formal surrender on the 2nd of September on the battleship Missouri and the end of World War II, and whereas the combined Allied powers and Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Forces Europe under General Eisenhower had previously accepted the surrender of Germany in May of 1945. Whereas at the end of June, the U.S. captured Okinawa, and one of these gentlemen here tonight was at Okinawa, and Iwo Jima, an island which the Allies could invade the Japanese home islands, the invasion to be headed by General Douglas MacArthur set for November 1945. And whereas the invasion promised to be a bloody seaborne attack of all times, on July 16th, a new option became available when the United States secretly detonated the world's first atomic bomb in New Mexico. And whereas 10 days later, the Allies issued the Potsdam Declaration demanding their unconditional surrender, and failure to comply would mean the inevitable and complete destruction of the Japanese armed forces, and just as inevitably the utter devastation of the Japanese homeland. On August the 6th, a B-29, the Enola Gay, dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima, and followed by August 8th over Nagasaki. Whereas the United States answered an appeal from the Japanese government that the authority of the emperor and the Japanese government to rule the state shall be subject to the supreme commander of Allied powers, and after 2 days of further debate, the emperor declared peace was preferable, and what became the end of the war, and the United States accepted the surrender. Whereas President Truman appointed Douglas MacArthur to head the Allied occupation, and the surrender was accepted aboard the USS Missouri. And whereas on the 2nd of September at 9 a.m., the Japanese foreign minister signed on behalf of the Japanese government, and General Umuzeu then signed for the Japanese armed forces. Whereas the United States, in the long years of that war, committed vast sums of money in support of our allies globally and suffered some 552,000 casualties, with 9 million men and women in uniform. Whereas Kershaw County did its part, with 97 killed from this very county alone, with great pain and suffering to the wounded and families who suffered those losses. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Kershaw County proclaims the week of 14 through 21 August as Victory in World War II week, wherein those veterans still living be sought out, and that the families of the dead and wounded be honored in churches and in public, that the graves of the fallen be tended with respect and honor, and that the names of those killed be remembered in the printed and radio media, and that it be further resolved that Kershaw County asks that the names of our honored dead in World War II be read aloud by veterans organizations and the county schools at times set aside on Veterans Day this year, 2020, for student assemblies and ceremonies held for that purpose. Having read that resolution, I ask Mr. Connell, whose family suffered horribly in that war. Mr. Connell, can I ask for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Bozard. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Connell. We have Mr. Snodgrass, if you'd make
it's an honor to make the motion in front of these fine men, and knowing that my great-uncle, Ivy K. Connell, who grew up in Camden, passed away in this war, which was one of the great accomplishments in U.S. history and also in the world. He's buried a short distance from here. It's a great achievement, and the values that were instilled by that generation are remarkable in United States history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. We're honored on behalf of your family that you're here tonight. And I see that the American Legion and VFW are represented here who help us honor the paratroopers that Lieutenant Connell was in before he was killed in Italy in 1944. Other comments, please. Mr. Gardner.
I'll just say that the pandemic that we're going through now is probably a mosquito bite to what you faced in World War II, and I just applaud you. The pandemic that we're going through now is probably a mosquito bite to what you faced.
How did you do that?
Playback.
in World War II, and I just applaud you.
Yeah, if we can-
The pandemic that we're going through now is
Repeat.
probably in World War II.
I perceive. You may have to reboot that thing. All right, very good.
In World War II.
I perceive.
so they can get a little closer.
Come up here. And if you just turn around so the people in the public can see you, and I'll read your names. It looks like we have the mic back. Turn around and face the camera. I think we have two veterans of World War II, but I'll read their names last. We have Jimmy King, Glenn Abenett, Jimmy Rabin, David Fuller, and Walter Riggins. Did I get everybody? And then from, And Mr. Lackey. No, I can't forget Mr. Lackey. And then we have two veterans of World War II, Charlie Hall and Perry McCoy. Would you raise your hands? Let's have a round of applause. Can't beat that. Actions, deeds, not words. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Connell, for your sacrifice and your family. We move now
Mr.
back
Chairman?
to, yeah.
Vote.
Say again?
Vote.
We now need to vote.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous and it passes. And then we can move now to approval of minutes. With that, the minutes are up on the screen and in your package at tab, let's see, B, which would be page 6. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Mr. Gardner, a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion? Seeing there is none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous with Mr. Snodgrass now present. Mary? All right, we move now to a series of public presentations. I'll turn it over to Mr. Carpenter for a COVID-19 update, followed right on with a census update. Please.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, just a brief update of the current conditions. As you see in front of you on the screen, we have our 14-day rolling total. That is the 14-day period that DHEC is using to determine the course of the disease. As you see, it spiked about the very end of July, and since then it's been on a downward trend. As was previously stated, a lot of reasons why perhaps. Certainly the downward trend is a good thing. I would say that moving on to the next slide, you would see that the average daily per month, we started with 4 almost in March, peaked at 18.6 reported cases per day in July, and then so far for this month, we're down to 13.9. The report today was particularly good, as we only reported 4 new cases in the county today. So the course of the disease, of course, we have Labor Day coming up, and certainly would encourage, as I think most everybody said, that if people choose to wear the masks, or if they're required to wear the masks, that they do so. That's my report.
Thank you. Can you give us a little bit about PPE and things of other supplies, how we're doing overall for the schools, for you, for the EMS?
The supply chains have now been well established and they're filled. The county early on was here as a provider of last resort. If they ran out of their own supplies and the state could not provide them, then the county provided supplies. In those early days, there were days when we worried whether we would have enough to get to the end of the day. I'm pleased to say that's not the case any longer. The individual entities, the school district, the nursing homes, the hospitals, they have their own supply chains established. They have the supplies coming in. The county still maintains an inventory and reserve. Our supply chains are established, so we are in a good position of having the equipment necessary and able to provide it as backup if needed.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Carpenter? Mr. Tucker?
I'm just putting this out, Mr. Carpenter. First of all, are we supplied enough? So as the doctor said early on September the 8th, I think he was the day off, when school starts back, if the school district gets in trouble, well, we can do some maybe backup, because some of these kids are not in mass right now because they're home. And they're going to have them when they start school. And of course, you know, some of these masks will only last a day, if that. Well, if you're taking them on and off, the ropes and stuff pop. So I just want to put that out and just keep that in mind, because we want to make sure that we keep all of them healthy.
We are assured by the school that they believe that they're going to be okay. Obviously, I don't know that we can provide 6,000 masks a day, but we certainly can back them up as needed.
Okay. Or at least introduce them to our supply chain as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good question. Other comments? Very good. I've talked to, I got a letter, and each councilman here will have a letter in your box that I signed back to Congressman Norman, offering advice to us. I responded, and I also asked him for some help. Specifically, you'll see in the letter, I asked him help on getting us money on is it the CARES Act, Vic?
Yes.
Would you explain what that is and how important that is for us?
The CARES Act was the last stimulus, if you would, that the Congress passed, that allocated funds to states. The state of South Carolina received approximately $900 million that was dedicated to providing reimbursements for expenses that have been incurred. Of that, about a little over 200 was allocated for local governments, hospitals, in the communities, things like that. The issue with that is the state has yet to release any of those funds. They must spend them by the law by the end of December. So they will be at some point. They've established a procedure. The county has submitted for the expenses that we have incurred as a result of COVID to date. The state, the entity the state has contracted with, in fact, is reviewing those claims. But we have as yet not received any reimbursements, and to my knowledge, nobody in the state has from the CARES Act.
I'll expand on that. I congratulated Mr. Carpenter last month on the aggressive way he went after the CARES money like no other county per capita in the state. And since then, in the last 10 days, I guess you and I had an exchange with some people at DHEC or DNR, I forget who up there at state, to get that money. And I've now asked Mr. Norman to help us out, Ralph Norman. So we'll see on that. I also asked him for help on looking at where the future is of the distribution of things like a vaccine, if ever we get one. And at the earliest, people are saying several months down the road, but we need to plan ahead and make our wishes known there too. But I imagine there'll be 365 million people in America asking where that vaccine is. Any other questions for Mr. Carpenter? Thank you, sir. Now, do you want to go to the census?
Sure. Yes, sir. Update on the census. As you may be aware, the federal government has decided to shorten the length of the census. Therefore, the census will end up at the end of September. Originally, it was supposed to run until the end of October. So they moved it up by 30 days. The current condition, if you look at that map of Kershaw County, it shows the percentages of participation in the census. We still, the least participation is in the Liberty Hill, Westville area. But the good news there is that they have increased their participation more than anybody in the county. So they have come the furthest in the last 30 days to catch up. Currently, Kershaw County ranks number 7 in the state. Our percentage of participation is 63.5%. We are ahead of the national average. We're ahead of the state average. Being ahead of the state average is good because that's where it affects us when formulas are derived for reimbursements, in part based on your population size. It is critical, given the amount of reimbursements from the local government fund, which reimburses us for money we have already spent to provide services for the state. It affects the school district. It affects the care for the elderly through Medicaid and Medicare. So this is important for participation's sake. So we've got another 6 weeks, essentially, The enumerators, which are the door-to-door people, have started. We participated in the training of them using our facility out at the Economic Development Office, and they're the ones going door-to-door. And like we have always in the past, there will still be people going door-to-door, and they'll be targeting those areas. But it is just critical still that people, if they've not filled out and participated in the census, that they do so. That's my report.
Mr. Tucker?
Mr. Carpenter, on that, because I actually saw some, and thanks, Mike, the census folks was training this past weekend at the city arena, getting folks ready to go door to door. My concern of cutting this thing 30 days, that it may skew the numbers where we don't have a chance or time to get everybody. What's the rationale and who made that decision?
Well, I'm not privy to the rationale. It was made in Washington, and
Well, that says it right there. No matter which group does it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Connell?
Mr. Carpenter, just wondering, the dividing lines in between the more dense and less dense areas that are shown, are those subparts of zip codes, or how are they designating that?
those are census tracts. So they go by the census tracts.
And are those per capita for the 2010 census? They divide them up equally, or how do they divide those?
But
Is the
yes,
popula-
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Each census tract has about approximately the same population.
As of 2010?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
sir.
That's a good question. Thank you, Ben. Other comments? I thank Mr. Tucker, Mr. Conley, and all your team to bringing us this far. I really appreciate it. And just to reiterate, for those of you that complain about your roads and can't get roads paved or things of that nature, the money for that comes from this census, from the federal and state government. So those of you that object to being counted and not being counted impacts directly the entire county's ability to get money. Is that right, Mr. Tucker?
That is correct, and that's the reason why I was wondering about those 30 days, because it's going to end up being a tax cut to us if the count's not right. But Washington will be able to blow that money somewhere else because they won't stop collecting it.
That's why it's critical, yes, sir.
Yep, so let's get the word out, and I think we could probably have a media campaign to go along with that and wearing the mask too, don't you know? All right, any other comments for Mr. Carpenter? Very fine, and also I would tell you Mr. Carpenter was congratulated roundly in several events, to include the Association of Counties, for his leadership for this county during this COVID over the last, hard to believe, 6 months. So with that, we move to the next item on the agenda. If we can go, Mr. Templer, to ordinances, item number 1, tab C, which is at page 9. If you'll go there, it's an ordinance, a second reading of an ordinance to rezone. I would ask Mr. Carpenter to do the honors there. Please tell us what we have here, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight for second reading an ordinance to rezone a piece of property, approximately 1 acre of land, for owner Mr. Ernest Wood, from RD1 to RD2. It has previously been passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously.
And it's in the Lugoff District?
Yes.
Very good. All right. Very good. With that, let's have a motion to approve. Mr. Bozard.
Yes, I deeply, yes, we approve this. We put
All right.
it on the first.
Okay, we have a first from Mr. Bozard, a second, please.
Second.
From Mr. Tucker. Discussion. Mr. Bozard, you want to lead?
Yes, Mr. Woods came to me some time back, and I suggested he do this with his daughter and his son. He wants to tear his house down and put another one in, a mobile home, I think it is. And we approved it on the first round, and we need to approve it on the second round.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing there are none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary. And we'll move on to the third reading. With the second item is the second reading of an ordinance to amend the Unified Code. It's at tab D. Again, Mr. Carpenter, I ask for your lead on that.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight an ordinance to amend the county's ZLDR, zoning and land development regulations, to amend the contents for permitted uses for solar farms. Council has previously approved this on first reading.
And that's at page 26 and on. Can we have a motion to approve?
So make that motion.
Mr. Bozard, thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Snodgrass. Mr. Bozard, you have the honors. You want to lead?
Please, thank you. I was not in favor of this thing, and I talked with three people today, and after talking with them, I'm now in favor of it, and I think this is what we need to do.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Bozard. Second, Mr. Snodgrass, any comments?
Sure. Just what I know about what I've heard and read from the solar industry is they welcome these sort of parameters, so they know what they're getting into, and understand that we're taking it seriously, that we're welcoming them into our county and the potential that they have, but also within certain parameters. So I'm excited about Kershaw County being the leader in green energy in the state. Bring it on.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing there are none, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We have Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker. Oh, it's unanimous. Thank you very much,
All right.
Mary. Thank you there, Mr. Gardner. And it passes and moves on to a third reading. Thank you for introducing it, Mr. Bozard. We move to item number 3, first reading of an ordinance to amend a zoning map again, and it's at tab E, and I believe that's at page 38. Mr. Carpenter, would you lead us out, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight an ordinance to rezone the county zoning map for approximately 20.3 acres of land for Mr. Wayne Galloway from RD1 to RD2.
Whose zone is that in? Is that in East Camden, or where is that? Can you tell me where that is, Mike?
It's down Antioch.
Antioch?
It's
Is that
Mr.
your
Tucker's
zone?
version is Mr. Tucker's section of Antioch. But
All right, good. All right, can we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tucker, a second?
second.
Second from Mr. Snodgrass. Mr. Tucker, do you want to lead off? Any comments?
This is first reading. I just wanted to make sure, Mike, no one has come forward with any opposition or anything. Okay.
He's looking it up, I think.
I saw him shaking his head.
There was nothing in the report.
Yeah, there was nothing in the report. I was just making sure nothing else was
I
there.
think he maybe got
Okay.
emails in favor of it.
Yeah, okay. Mike, come forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mike. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Other comments? First reading, ready for a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Again, it's unanimous. Mary, move on to a second reading on that. Item number 4 is an emergency ordinance by Kershaw County Council to require face coverings in the unincorporated area of Kershaw County. It's at tab F, and that would be on page 54 in your notepads. With that, Mr. Carpenter, do we need to have you take us through that, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight an emergency ordinance by county council that would require face coverings in the unincorporated part of the county. Currently, the city of Camden has an ordinance within the incorporated area of the city of Camden. Kershaw County does not. Kershaw County has a resolution encouraging the wearing of masks within the unincorporated area.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner is reflected here as having put this on the agenda. Mr. Gardner, you want to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I move to approve the requirement for face coverings for the county.
And a second
Second.
from Mr. Tucker. As an administrative issue here, I am told by our attorney, and I've checked it, the law requires 3 votes and a public hearing on ordinances, but in emergency situations, a full house, 2/3 majority must pass in order to do it for a single reading. This normal procedure, just to say again, is 3 readings and a public hearing. Since this is filed on emergency conditions, the ruling is it can be done in 1 reading without a public hearing, but that it would take, a 2/3 majority, right, Mr. DeBose?
I think it's 2/3 of those present and voting.
That's correct. Thank you very much. He always makes a refinement, as you noticed. So, Mr. Gardner, would you lead us through this?
Absolutely. I think that we all just saw on the graphs that the numbers went up significantly about Memorial Day when we reopened some of the things. And we've been very fortunate that the last few days we have seen numbers that are lower, and I think that's great. However, and I think we opened things back too early, and that's my personal opinion. And I think what has happened is that social distancing is fine and it works, but I think a mask works equally as well, if not better. I think we saw that Our 14-day total at one time was 27, which is less than 2 a day, and I think it went over 300 at one time, which is over 21 new cases per day. And I don't think that's acceptable. I think that we've lacked leadership at the federal level and the state level, and I think we have an opportunity here at a local level to step up. You know, as elected officials, we do make policy and laws that concern the county, but one of the things we do is we have the welfare and health and welfare of our citizens at our door. And I think this is one of the ways that we can step up and say, you know, this is what we need to do, because I believe masks work. Now, I'm one of the ones that has a compromised system. I have stage 4 kidney cancer. I don't say that for your sympathy. I say that because if I get COVID, my outcome is not going to be very good. But even if I didn't have that, I believe in masks because I believe they work. I believe when 2 people wear masks close together, I think it's a proven fact that the likelihood of spreading that is very high. I think that we, you know, I got some information from a friend of mine, he sent it to me, that New York City has 8.5 million people. And as of Saturday, I think when I looked, they've had over 32,000 deaths. Hong Kong has 8 million people, and as of Saturday, they had 47 deaths because 98% of the people there wear masks. I was just reading this afternoon about Italy. Italy is one of the hot spots, and I think we can trace some of our own cases back to Italy. We had a couple that vacationed and came back unaware that they had this virus. And that's one of the bad things about it when you talk about SARS and H1N1 and all those things, that the COVID-19 has a gestation period of up to 14 days or longer, somewhere in there. So you can go around and spread it and not know you're spreading it. I read an article about a man, I think he was in Oregon or Washington. They've traced back to him at a church function. He infected 96 people unknowingly because he didn't wear a mask. Most recently, Italy, again, one of the hot spots in the beginning. Now they've got a handle on it because they had a really serious lockdown, and they have people wearing masks. And Saturday in the United States, we had 32,000 new cases. Italy had 624. I think those amazing stats tell us exactly what we need to do. And I think that it's time for us to stand up and take a stand and say, this is what we need to do. I'd rather wear a mask for 60 days than wear a ventilator tube in my throat, begging to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Mr. Tucker, do you want to comment, please?
I'm going to yield at this moment.
Very good. Other comments?
Yes.
Mr. Bozard?
Most of the buildings I go in Kershaw County and even in Columbia, most of them require a mask, and I wear one. Most of the churches, I can't speak for most of them, but it's my church, we don't require a mask, but I wear one in church. But when it comes to voting this thing in county-wise, I can't vote for that. And I can understand where Mr. Gardner's coming from, but I cannot support it. I will not support it. When it's required of me to wear a mask, I'll wear one. But if it's not required of me, I will not wear one, even though I do wear one in church, mainly because my wife asked me to. So I got to listen to her. That's my cook.
So we should have asked her about this?
But anyway, as I said, I can understand where Mr. Gardner's coming from, and I can appreciate it, but I cannot support this motion. Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Snodgrass, please, sir.
Sure. Members of council, this is probably one of the toughest few days that I've had in studying this, just because just my personality is, I try to be very objective, and I try to see everything from all sides. And when you have that kind of personality, you really go back and forth on something. That doesn't mean that I'm astray in my principles. It's just I'm trying to do my best to see it from all sides. And of course, my goal is to I try to always see life through someone else's eyes, through someone else's shoes. And so this is certainly something that I've been studying on. And I've actually been studying the COVID numbers in depth for many months now. As a pastor who's been leading a church through regathering, it's kind of, I've become, well, I haven't become a virologist or anything, but I've become someone who watches those numbers very closely. And through all that data, there are some bright spots that I see, and I'm going to take my time to share this. Mr. Carpenter gave a report, and it was a great report. And but there were some other things that I see in there that, for me, are some good news. Mr. Carpenter, our 14-day running total is 204. Is that right? That's 204. And so, according to DHEC, our current county percent positive rate as of yesterday is 16.3%, which is down from, it's been in the 20s for a couple weeks now. So it's good to see that dropping, and it's good to see a lot of trends that are dropping. When you look at the numbers, so if you have, since inception, we have, 1,400 and some odd cases, something like that, neighborhoods, 1,400. And we have 69 to 70,000 citizens in Kershaw County. Is that a good?
About 63.
63? Okay, all right. So even then, if you do the math on that, you're looking at anywhere between 2 to 3% of our citizens have been infected. And so you see those numbers, and of course, those 3% are those are a lot of important people and a lot of valuable people that are behind those numbers. So that I don't say that lightly. And then when you take our 14-day total, and this is going to be, I'm kind of just sharing, I'm thinking out loud, trying to share with everyone my thought process through all of this, because this has been weighing heavy on me. When you take our 14-day total of 204, and you do the math on the amount of citizens in our county, then you're looking at 0.3% that currently are infected with this dreadful disease. Another good thing is we're seeing a recovery rate. DHEC put out the recovery rate today of 91%. That's good news. Then I looked at counties who have passed a mask ordinance. And you've got 8 counties that also have passed a mask ordinance in the last 2 weeks or even a month. And so then I start looking at their numbers. And I was encouraged to see that Kershaw County shares very similar stats with those counties that have already passed a face covering ordinance. In fact, you've even got some counties like Saluda. Their percent positive right now is 37%, and they've passed a mask ordinance. And I don't say that to say that masks don't work, because I do believe that they do aid in the reduction of spread. It's a choice that I make for me and my family. We have a mask, and and then you look at our percent positive, like I said, was 16.3%. So these are all the things that went into as I was studying this. And then I began to think about, okay, what's the practicality of enforcing something like this? When you think about a sheriff's department that has patrol deputies, not counting civil and those things, when you have a department that has maybe 4 to 6 patrol deputies on shift, give or take, that's an approximation. Then you start talking about, okay, well, is this a practical thing that we can enforce as a county? Given the current environment that we have in our country with law enforcement and the interactions that they're having, do we want to put them in a situation in where it's another opportunity to have maybe possibly a negative interaction with citizens? Not saying they would. I believe our deputies and our law enforcement they're the best. So I'm not saying that they would, but the possibility does exist. And then someone might say, well, we're not going to be able to enforce it. We're going to be like the city of Camden, and we're going to use it as an educational tool, and we're going to use it as just a way to nudge people. I'm convinced that what we did 4 weeks ago with our resolution, I'm convinced that moved us forward in putting the county in a position to be able to educate and somewhere to stand that by a 6-1 vote, this county council 4 weeks ago said, we believe masks are important. we believe it's a wise choice for everyone to wear a mask. And since then, our public information officer has been able to put out graphics and put out all sorts of encouragement for that. And we're beginning to see that masks are a choice that our citizens have already made. Masks are widely used. All of our big box stores allow them to, or they mandate them. Our governor has mandated that every restaurant, their employees should wear a mask or are to wear a mask. I'm thankful that the governor has created this system in which you can incentivize restaurants and other businesses to put masks into place. And so, maybe there's a free market response here. Maybe I know personally, I don't always go into businesses that I know don't require masks. I tend to go to ones who do require masks. So I think it's worth us realizing that there's a free market response here to encourage masks. And so, yes, I believe the virus is serious. Yes, I believe that masks are important to curbing. But when I look at the numbers, I'm convinced that our community is beginning to make the wise choice. And I'm thankful for that. And at this time, I don't see where we need to force them into a choice in which the evidence is showing that they're beginning to make on their own. And so, I've got friends on all my friends up here, and so I always don't like going against I don't like stirring controversy. So I really hate that, but I'm not going to be able to support this tonight. And thank you for allowing me to meander through my mind verbally. Thank you.
Other comments?
I'll yield.
Mr. Gardner, Mr. Tucker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Snodgrass, you say there's a 91% recovery? Is that
According to DHEC numbers today, yes, sir.
which means there's 9% that doesn't recover. 9 out of 100. I don't want to be one of those 9. So,
Yeah, according to that doesn't mean they 9% died. I mean, I understand I appreciate the intent of what you're saying. You're right; those people are important.
I'm 91% recovery. That tells me 9% don't. That's what I read into it. So, so you can read into it whatever you want to. That's what I decide to read into it. Okay, you can have your own opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
We also have seatbelt laws. We have speed limit laws. You choose to do that. You choose to obey the speed limit. You choose to wear your seatbelt. If you don't, there's consequences. Not everybody that doesn't wear them gets a ticket. Not everybody that speeds gets a ticket. We tell people to pay their taxes. Most of them do. Some of them don't. There's consequences to that as well. Like you mentioned, the big box stores, they're requiring it. Schools are requiring it. And just today, if you follow college football, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 canceled their season. And I expect the other Power 5 conferences are going to do the same. I don't think there's going to be college football. And there's a reason for that, because they see there's going to be a problem, or they feel like there's going to be a problem. And we're talking about multi-billion dollars of revenue for colleges, TV rights, all those other things. I think that's in itself says we've got a major problem. And I just think that wearing a mask is not going to solve the problem, but it will aid in the problem. I don't know about you, but I want to see life normal again. I'm tired of sitting at home every night. I'm tired of not being able to go to a restaurant. I'm tired of not being able to go to a movie or whatever. And I think 60 days with a mask will significantly change our numbers. And that's why I bring this to the table. Thank you.
Mr. Snodgrass, please.
Sure. Just for the sake of clarity, this is certainly not argumentative. I think we're having a very valuable discussion on a very important issue that means a lot to a lot of citizens in our county. That 91%, what they say is that just means people who haven't recovered yet. So within that 14-day total, there are people who just haven't recovered yet, because certainly 9% of South Carolinians have not died of COVID. It's a lot lower than that. But again, those people are very important who haven't yet recovered. The seatbelt, people, I've heard that argument, and I guess I take it a little bit different stance when you look at a motor vehicle which is registered through the state of South Carolina, which is driven on state of South Carolina roads that are already regulated, I think there's obviously precedent and there's room for the state, yes, to regulate those things, and those are regulated at the state level. But you're right. I mean, those are laws that we abide by. However, I just in this juncture, I see there's a different precedent for motor vehicle laws versus mass usage.
Very good. Mr. Gardner, are you continuing?
You know, I hear we talk about our liberties and our rights and government overstepping their bounds, and so if I go to the other side of that and you say you don't have a right or you don't want to wear a mask because that's your right, well, how about when you cough on me and sneeze on me and you give me COVID? Have you not stepped on my rights? Have you not stepped on my rights of being safe when you don't wear one? So that's an argument as well. If you don't have to wear one, and then you give me COVID. Now, I'd hate to be the one that would go out here and catch it and take it back to, my wife, my kids, my parents, grandparents, and then they died from it. I'd hate to be the one to say, it's my fault. And that's not a scare tactic, that's a fact. Because you don't know you have it many times, and you take it in on it. It's an innocent thing. You don't mean to do it, but at the same time, that's what happens. So that concludes what I have to say about it. Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I won't be long. I just want to get a clearer understanding. I'm going to support this tonight. Let me state that. I wouldn't have seconded the motion if I didn't, but I'm hearing that 9% does not recover. I'm hearing that 9% is not dead, but I can assure you their life is not normal. A lot of people that do recover from this thing is got underlying conditions now. We're perfectly healthy and we're doing good, but now not able to do the things that they used to do. So it's affecting them in some type of way, shape, or form if they haven't fully recovered. Now, I have no one, and I thank God, in my family who has gotten COVID-19. And that's been very tactful, done with my siblings and nieces and nephews and my family. We police ourselves, and I've got 80-something-year-old parents and aunties and things, and I'm very careful where I go around. I believe these masks work, and I believe that we need to wear them to keep each other safe, not just yourself, but others. I have not sat down in a restaurant and eaten since this come out because you can't eat with this mask on, and I understand that. I mean, we're just applying a little bit of common sense. So I do carry out or takeout because I don't want to be exposed to the people that's having a jolly good time up in there, swapping spit and whatever else they swapping, and then I get contaminated. So I choose to go where I need to go and do in a safe manner, but at the same time, if I bump up into you in the Lowe's and you chatting and spitting, and I don't have my mask on, and you don't have yours on, and you're carrying something, then here we go, or if I'm carrying something. And as you probably have looked at the numbers, there's a lot of us that's asymptomatic, more than we thought, meaning you walking around healthy and fine, but you spreading the crap out of this mess. It's an invisible disease. Everybody keeps comparing it to A, B, C, D, E, and F, but you don't know this disease. We don't have enough data, enough science on it to tell us all the parameters we need to do to protect ourselves better. I know that Councilman Snodgrass, you said traffic laws are different, but if I ask right now, and I asked this to a council member yesterday, how many of y'all up here gets a ticket for improper signal or no signal? Police don't enforce that either, not unless you're wrecked. But it's on the books. Everything is not going to be enforced as on the books or not on the books, but what we're trying to do is just have our citizens to be a little bit more responsible by having some buy-in into what is going to be healthy until we can figure all this out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other comments? I'll summarize my view and first say that Mr. Gardner and Mr. Tucker are passionate about this because they're passionate about the county, and I appreciate the way they put forward the argument for masks, one that I fully agree with. The masks are an essential component of the total picture we as a county will endure. And let's just take the most optimistic view that this is going to last us another 4 months and maybe as far out as 8 months. And that is the most reasonable, rational approach, is to take the long view. And the best law of the human heart is the human heart itself. Out of respect, as Mr. Tucker and Mr. Gardner have said, and out of courtesy and out of regard for the health of your fellow man, whether you believe in masks or not, the other person does. And as St. Paul said, don't be a stumbling block. Step up and show respect and courtesy and wear the mask, wash your hands, keep your social distance. And we as a county have been saying that for 6 months. And Mr. Carpenter has said it with regularity on his monthly, weekly, daily broadcasts. And I say it again tonight, support the mask. That's why we had a resolution, and every person on this desk here tonight supported that resolution as a belief in effectiveness of these measures, which are all that we have. And as a soldier, you grab an entrenching tool if you ain't got a rifle, and you defend yourself and your fellow man. Well, we got a mask. I would just encourage you to wear it. Secondly, Americans wouldn't follow you out of curiosity if they don't believe in you. Americans are people who like to be inspired, educated, and told the reason why. They won't follow you across the street if they don't believe in you. And I would tell you that we need to do a job of persuading our people to believe in us, leadership on this table, and in several counties, the cities and towns in this county, and make the case for doing what we can to save one another, as Tom and Mr. Tucker have said. But also, the fundamental issue for me is believing in our people, believing in our county, and the power of our county to get it done. And that's what I'm appealing to tonight. But also, I believe you should not give an order you can't enforce or you won't enforce. Because when you tell them to do something really dangerous the next time, they'll say, well, he didn't believe in that first order. Why should I ask him to believe in a law that I passed on the second go-around? It's not military, it's human nature. Human beings deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, but they also, under our Constitution, as Mr. Snodgrass has pointed out, a concept of liberty, a liberty also to do the right thing for your fellow man and not just do what you want to do. So I'm not going to support it tonight, but I'm going to watch it very carefully as we move through the Labor Day period. With that, I think we can move to a vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Connell.
Something you said just sparked me wanting to say something. So I won't support it tonight, and it's in part due to the separation between a civil and a legal criminal matter. So I don't think we should be in the habit of passing laws. And again, to back up, this is us looking at passing a civil ordinance that would result in a money fine if someone violates it. I don't think we should be in the habit of passing an ordinance that we can't fully enforce. Now, in consulting with our legal counsel, maybe it's legal to pass the ordinance, but we really would be hamstrung because of who we are as a county. We're a municipality, we're a baby of the state, a creation of the state, and the people that would have to enforce this wouldn't necessarily have the authority to make people produce IDs and effectively write the civil summons or the ticket or however that would be fashioned. It would go down to some code enforcement officers that don't have that authority or ability. Or I even heard some building and zoning officials. Mike, you going to be doing that? You know, so that's the primary reason that I would oppose it. Whether or not you agree with the effectiveness of masks, I think Mr. Snodgrass was right that the best the county could do legally was, I think it was 2 meetings ago, whenever we voted and did the resolution recommending masks, assume the risk, protect yourself if you're at risk or otherwise. I have to say that I believe it was Dr. Godfrey and Mr. Gardner's comments tonight were very compelling. But in spite of the compulsion, I too lean libertarian and have to be confined by what I think the law allows and wouldn't overstep what I don't think we can enforce. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, very good. I'm ready to.
Question.
Yeah, Mr. Gardner, go right ahead.
So, being as an attorney, and I'm trying to read between your lines there, if I'm infected by somebody and I know who that is, does that mean I can bring a civil lawsuit against them?
That's certainly in your discretion if you can establish a duty and a
I
breach.
think that's what you're saying, essentially, so.
No, I'm just saying you could if you want to. Anybody with $180 can file a lawsuit.
It won't hold up in court.
I'm ready to call the question. With that, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner. All those opposed signify by raising your hands. Mr. Connell, Mr. Bozard, Mr. Burns, and Mr. Snodgrass. Please, I kindly refrain from these outbursts. The motion fails, and we'll move on to the next item, item number 5, an emergency ordinance to establish safety measures, et cetera. I believe this is an extension of the state of emergency. I'd ask Mr. Carpenter to carry this forward. Please, sir, tell us what we have
Mr. Chairman,
here.
members of council, by state law, the state of emergency that has been passed 3 times previously by council must be renewed if it is the desire of the council to continue under the same conditions that it was originally passed.
Very good, and that's at tab H. It's on the screen. It's page 58. Can we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
That you, Mr. Tucker?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Tucker, a second.
Second.
Mr. Snodgrass, any discussion, Mr. Tucker?
No, sir.
Any other discussion? Just to be clear, this with effect from tonight and ends in 60 days. Is that correct, Mr. DeBose?
Yes, 60 days from, 61st day from the day, yes.
Very good. So we'll need to renew it to give these powers to Mr. Carpenter to run the county in a rather extraordinary way, which he has done with tremendous elan. I will tell you that. With that, we can move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And Mary, it looks like it's unanimous. We move to the next item, which is new business, which is a Clean Community Commission appointments at tab H, which I believe is at page 61. 60, thank you. And we have, I think, nominations against that. There are 2 nominations. And I believe Mr. Tucker will make the nominations for, let me catch up, Jill Wolf and Patricia Jackson on behalf of,
No.
I'm sorry?
Thomas Webb.
Is Thomas Webb extending or not?
Yes.
Is that correct, Tom?
I just told you, yes.
I'm just, hang on a minute, young man. Okay. All right, so Mary, what the information I had was is that Tom was going to drop off, but you say now it's from Mr. Fielding only dropping off.
He's replacing Doug Fielding.
Well, Tom is already on it.
But his term has expired, so he would need to be reappointed.
So
Right.
that's my point here. Okay. I'm just trying to establish a record here. And Mr. Webb would like to extend. And he is in Jimmy's district. Jimmy nominated him.
No, he's in my district.
Is in your district?
Right.
Okay, so I'm just doing the homework here. So Mary, we'll reverse what we started out to do, and we'll reappoint Mr. Webb in this particular action, and then we will ask Mr. Tucker to take the next action.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Did you get his application and did it get submitted into the package? Because I don't know if we can do that today. Okay, all
That's
right.
reappointment time.
Okay.
Good question. So there's no argument on that. So with that, let's take a motion from Mr. Bozard to extend Mr. Webb.
Yes.
And you so move. I can have a second, please.
Second.
Second from Mr. Tucker. Any discussion? I would just say, Tom, thanks for the great work you did over the last few years. It was Mr. Bozard who came in with the idea of setting this commission up. And I saw Mr. Webb out there with a bag walking down Highway 97 at the risk of his life back on the first time we did this. And I appreciate your support. With that, the county won, I think, best in the state and we know we've got a long way to go. Mr. Connell, you had a question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. I see Ms. Wolf here and her family tonight. I know we'd mentioned her name specifically. Is that? Okay.
Yes.
I just want to
Yes,
make
yes,
sure
we-
we had it covered.
We're getting to that, too.
Because I heard another name mentioned of Ms. Jackson,
Right.
which I had not heard previously.
Yeah, we'll go with Ms. Wolf.
I replaced her.
Okay.
All right, very good. You put your mask on there. You go, fella.
I'm drinking water.
All right, with that, thanks again, Tom. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor of extending the appointment, reappointment of Mr. Webb, signify by raising your hand. Mary, thanks for leading us through that. I was a little bit awry on that one. We now move to the next replacement for Mr. Doug Fielding. Again, I think Mr. Tucker will represent Mr. Jones on that. Mr. Tucker, you want to make a nomination?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would like to make a motion to nominate Ms. Jill H., which is Huckabee Wolf, to the Clean Community Commission
Second.
on behalf of
Second,
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Connell, thank you, sir. Ms. Wolf, are you here?
Yes, she is.
There you, oh, I see you behind the mask. Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker.
I just want to say that, Mr. Jones, that I wanted to make sure that I tell Ms. Wolf and her family thank you. She lives in Lugoff, but he told me that you're from the big town of Bethune up there where the Huckabees are from. And we appreciate what your family does as far as your business here in this county, as well as the citizens and stuff that have been here for a long time. We look forward to you continue to serve and do good work here in Kershaw County. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Connell.
Ms. Wolf is a proud citizen of Kershaw County, and I have to say, anybody that can clean up after Kip and Mason, she's got good experience.
Ms. Wolf, I'll just tell you, in closing out, that we'll get you in touch with Ms. Swan and that team. We have had a tremendous support from the county on behalf of the things that you've done, and we've been able to get grants from the state and federal grants to help us on cleaning things up. As I've already eulogized Mr. Webb and his hard effort, but it's important to get the entire county behind us out of a sense of pride and just well-being, and I welcome you to the team. Thank you, ma'am. With that, let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Wolf, and thank you, Tom. Move to the next item, which is the Library Board appointment at tab I to replace David Sloan. Again, Mr. Tucker, you have the honors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This appointment is for Ms. Lois Flynn Stuber, which is in my district. They live in my district. And she's, of course, a graduate of Clemson and Camden High School here back in the day, and she is willing to serve on the library board.
Thank you. Can we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bozard. Any further discussion?
Was that Buddha or Snodgrass?
Say again?
Okay.
Yep, we got it. With that, let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And she is duly appointed. Thank you very much, Mary. We move now to council briefings. We'll start with you, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be short as I possibly can be. I just want to say that, Tom, I appreciate your efforts on you trying to do what we thought was the right thing. And this was no surprise because we told you a month ago that if the numbers didn't come down, this will be coming. And I respect and understand all of my colleagues' votes. And something bothered me, though, at the end of the vote and when the chairman had to call out the audience. I wish that as long as I've been up here and as long as you're going to be up here, that when we do vote on hot topic issues, please don't take your vote because of political preference. Do what is right, and I will always respect your vote. Not saying anybody did that, but I just thought I needed to say that. With that being said, my thoughts and prayers go out to one of our colleagues from over there in Richland County, Chip Jackson, who had served a long time in Richland County Council. He died of the COVID-19 virus, and so we're praying for he and his family as well. Vic, I want to say that I know I didn't make it. First one I missed in 15 years down to the conference, but I know you did a good job and made us all proud, and I thank you for always being willing to go to share your thoughts and experience along with Kershaw County successes to these things. And we're very proud of you and Michael for being willing to serve with other counties. With that, I want to say too to the Jones family, I hope that Jimmy has a speedy recovery because he had surgery tonight. And I personally spoke with him before coming here. He wanted to call in, but he can't even find the buttons on the phone. So I don't know how he'll read the agenda, but he's home resting, and y'all keep him in your prayers as he recovers. That concludes my reports, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
sir. Mr. Gardner.
Just because the ordinance failed doesn't mean that you shouldn't wear a mask. Thank you.
That's exactly right. Mr. Bozard.
No comment.
No comments. Mr. Connell.
No report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Snodgrass.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, I'll wrap up with, I'll echo similar to what Mr. Tucker was saying. We tackled a tough issue tonight, one that regrettably has seemed to polarize our country as if our country needed one more thing to be polarized about. And I want folks to know that my vote had nothing to do with, being anti-mask or being, thinking this thing is a hoax. I think the virus is real. I think it's a real threat. It had more to do with precedent, had more to do with believing that Kershaw County citizens are making the right choice and will continue to make the right choice to, you believe in liberty. The best way you can use your liberty is to think about your neighbor. And that's not just with masks, that's with everything. So I would encourage us to be charitable in all that we do. I'll follow some discussions on Facebook, and it's interesting the people that are quick to lash out at those who wear a mask. And that, I'll be honest with that bothers me. If people are choosing to wear a mask, we don't have to call them they're fearful or they're scared or anything like that. And of course, the same could be said for the other side. Those who don't choose to wear a mask. Those of us who do masks. I mean, it's not. We don't need to chide them. You're not going to shame people into wearing a mask. I can tell you that right now. It's just not going to work. So as I look at the numbers, Mr. Tucker, you mentioned that you want to see the numbers at a certain direction, and sure, they're not at all where we would want them to be. But I am thankful that we did see some downward trends, and we still got a lot of week left. We've got a lot of week left, and Mr. Carpenter, he gives us those reports about noon, about every day. We get the reports, and I pray every day as those messages come in, say, Lord, please help us. So just want to remind people that please be charitable in your discourse. Please be charitable in your discourse. Wear a mask. Mr. Tom, take your zinc supplement, right? And I'm being serious because I'm with you on that one. There are things that we can be doing. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Very good. I'll close it out, and then we'll attend to some other business. No man up here argued against using the mask, okay? In fact, in resolution that is still valid, we are encouraging, and that doesn't mean a namby-bamby, touchy-feely approach. We're arguing, do it, please. Help your fellow man. Labor Day is just a few weeks away, and our school districts need to bring the numbers down. If you're a parent right now, and there's at least 2 up here, you're really concerned about what's going to happen for our 10,000 school children. We're asking and we're trusting in you as a council with our fellow men and women in this county to wear the mask, wash your hands, socially distance, and don't do things that are stupid, okay? With that, I want to make sure everybody knows that we're about to lose a devoted servant and an amazing, skilled peace officer. Kermit is leaving. This is his last meeting. Can you ask him to come in here? We want to make sure we got a chance. Come on up here, Kermit.
And where his face.
The other day, he asked me for one of these coins that most people skip across the river. I wanted just to give you one. Here you are, Kermit. Thank you.
Bring your RV with you. Hey, tell us what you're gonna be doing. Oh, RVing. That's my man.
He's gonna go fishing. A couple of things, and I'll close it out very quickly and pass it to Mr. Carpenter. With the hard work of Mr. Carpenter and especially Mr. Conley and Mr. Tucker, we've gotten money for the bus route from Elgin to Camden. And I would like to help you, Mr. Carpenter, Mr. Conley, put some pressure on the people who are supposed to deliver on that. I don't want to have this thing go on forever. We finally got it, I think, to a point of resolution. Let me know if I can help. Veterans Park, at some point, we'll want to open it up. Mr. Carpenter, can you allow us a day when we can do a very soft opening in a COVID environment, but we want to get it open. A lot of people are asking about Veterans Park down at the Wateree, and every time you drive that bridge, you just see that pier out there. Oh, I can't wait to use it. That's terrific. Our next meeting is a month from now, the 8th, I think, of September, right after Labor Day.
First day of school.
Yep. And before then, we also have the 240th anniversary of the Battle of Camden. It'll be this Saturday. Come out if you want to be hot. We'll shoot some cannons. We'll have some reenactors. We'll have some very short speeches, and you'll see that due to some of the funds that Mr. Carpenter and others have helped us get, there have been significant progress on expanding that battlefield and bringing the story alive along with the work and the funds that Mr. Carpenter got. It seems to be a repeat of OPM for the Visitor Center, which will open next year down on Highway 521. We'll have an executive session after this, and I'll let Mr. DeBose open that. With that, Mr. Carpenter, comments.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, 2 items for you. One is I would like to tell you that we will be having the opening for the River Park on Thursday, the 27th of this month. So that'll be open in time for Labor Day for people to go kayaking, canoeing, walking, picnics along the creek and the river as well. I would also like to introduce you to a lady named Josephine. Josephine is somewhere in the Caribbean right now, and hopefully she will take the route of others and leave us alone. But
Yes,
please be aware that staff is on top of it, and our emergency managers at the state and county level are keeping an eye on it, and we'll be prepared should she decide to visit us before Labor Day as well. That's my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeBose.
Mr. Chairman and council, I would like to request an executive session to discuss a legal contractual matter involving the health district of Kershaw County.
Further clarification, you need yourself and Mr. Carpenter and the members here.
Yes.
And there will be no vote thereafter.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, no vote.
There will definitely be no vote. So if those of you that want to hang around, there will be really little to see. But with that, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So made.
Mr. Bozard, a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion. With that, let's go into executive session. Let me have a vote first. Those in favor?
All from forward.
And it's unanimous, and we're disclosed. Connell? All right, I have, what's the discussion?
That was Tom.
First one, Tom Gardner.
You didn't wait on me, bud?
Beat you. All right, the room is cleared. Any discussion? I have one thing that I forgot to mention. In your boxes is a letter that Mr. Carpenter and I crafted to send to the Secretary of Department of Transportation. On one side, we expressed our dissatisfaction with the cost and the time it took to do the bypass that has since been opened. But it was, I will not use any adjectives or adverbs, but it was a huge overrun in time and money. And it may cause, secondly, the bank to be, which is known as the Santee Lynch's cog, to not have enough money to complete the action at CCTC in the Black River Road. It may have drained the bank. The third thing is those of us who have property west of the Wateree, which is myself, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell, and Mr. Jones, cannot be happy, and I believe you are also west of the Wateree, Mr. Tucker, cannot be happy that we have not seen a single dime in 27 years put against the roads, against our priorities west of the Wateree, not a dime. So I have asked the Secretary of Transportation, and she has told me she will favorably consider it in light of the census to move us away, Ben, say hallelujah, away from the Central Midlands cog and into the Santee Lynch's cog. And that's what the letter says. It was as polite as I could be, but it's just a terrible situation. I thank Mr. Carpenter for a stunning brief last Thursday that carried the day. And we've got about 18 months of working this out. And then we'll see 7 years from now, maybe some money. But we need money for Black River Road to get our CCTC done. Did I do okay with that, Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, sir, but I think we neglected to vote to come out of executive session.
No, we did.
Yes,
Well, we're in discussion right now. Yeah. Okay, now let's move to come out of executive session. All those in favor? We're about of executive session. The second thing is, can we have now a motion to
Adjourn.
Mr. Bozard, a second from Mr. Tucker. Any discussion? There is none. Move to a vote.
Unanimous.
It's unanimous except for Mr. Snodgrass. All right.
Okay.